Welcome to Holly's Quiet Harbor. Take a deep breath and let your mind begin to rest. In the village of Briar Hollow, nothing truly stayed lost. Things might wander for a while. A missing glove, a misplaced letter, a teacup set down absent-mindedly in the wrong garden. But sooner or later, they found their way home again. It was one of those quiet, unspoken truths the villagers held, with the same certainty as the turning of the seasons. So, when the locket disappeared, people noticed. Not immediately. At first, he was only a small pause in conversation at the corner table of the Willow and Finch tea room. "I must have set it down somewhere," said Mrs. Eliza Pembry, her fingers instinctively touching the place at her throat where the delicate gold chain usually rested. Across from her, Nora Elwood looked up from her teacup. "You always wear it," she said gently. "Yes," Eliza replied, "I do." There was no alarm in her voice, not yet. Only a quiet confusion, as though something familiar had shifted slightly out of place. "It will turn up," Nora said, because in Briar Hollow, that was what one said. But as the afternoon light faded and the tea room emptied, Eliza's hand returned again and again to her collarbone, and each time it lingered a little longer. Nora Elwood did not consider herself a detective. She owned the tea room, baked the scones, remembered everyone's usual order, and had a particular talent for noticing when something was not quite right, even when no one said so aloud. It was a small skill, but in Briar Hollow, small skills often proved useful. That evening, as she wiped down the last table and straightened the chairs, she found herself thinking about the locket. Eliza Pembry had worn it for as long as Nora could remember. A simple gold oval, no larger than a coin. Not flashy, not new, but unmistakably meaningful. And now it was gone. The next morning, Nora rose early. Not because there was urgency. Briar Hollow did not favor urgency. But because curiosity had settled gently into her thoughts, and she had learned long ago that such curiosity rarely arrived without reason. She tied on her apron, set the dough to rise, and opened the tea room doors just as the first light touched the rooftops. By mid-morning, the village had begun to hum with quiet speculation. "It's not like her to misplace something so important," said Mrs. Finch. "Perhaps she took it off," suggested Mr. Carter. "She never takes it off," someone else replied. Nora listened and noticed, because there was something else beneath the conversation. Not worry, not exactly, but a sense that the locket's absence meant more than the loss of an object. It meant a story had been interrupted. By noon, Nora made a decision. She closed the tea room early, just an hour, and left a small note on the door. "Back shortly. Please help yourself to the lavender biscuits." In Briar Hollow, this was considered perfectly acceptable. Her first stop was Eliza's cottage. It stood at the edge of the village, where the hedges gave way to soft fields and a narrow footpath wound toward the woods. Roses climbed the stone walls, their petals just beginning to fade into late summer softness. Eliza answered the door with a faint smile. "Nora," she said, "you're not open?" "For a little while," Nora replied. "May I come in?" Eliza stepped aside. The cottage was as Nora expected. Neat, warm, and filled with small, thoughtful details. A teapot rested on the table. A half-finished piece of embroidery lay beside it. But there was a stillness in the room that hadn't been there before. Not emptiness, just quiet. "You've come about the locket," Eliza said. "Yes." Eliza sat down slowly. "I thought I'd taken it off before bed," she said. "But it wasn't on the table this morning, and I don't remember setting it anywhere else." Nora nodded. "When did you last notice it?" Eliza frowned slightly. "Yesterday afternoon, at the tea room." Nora felt something settle into place. "Would you mind if I retraced your steps?" Eliza shook her head. "Not at all." Nora began with the tea room. She moved through it slowly, not searching in the hurried sense, but observing. The corner table where Eliza had sat, the chair, the window beside it. She checked beneath the table, along the floorboards, even the small gap between the cushions of the bench. Nothing. But as she stood there, she noticed something else. The window. It had been open yesterday afternoon. She remembered now. The warm breeze, the way the curtains had shifted. And just beyond the window, the garden path. The path led behind the tea room, winding through a small patch of herbs and wildflowers before joining the main lane. Nora stepped outside. The air was soft, carrying the faint scent of rosemary and sun-warmed earth. She walked the path slowly, not looking for the locket exactly, looking for anything that felt out of place. Halfway along, she paused. There, caught on a low branch of lavender, was something small. Not the locket, but a thread. Fine, pale, almost invisible. Nora reached out and touched it. It was from a shawl. Eliza often wore one. Nora's gaze followed the line of that branch, then drifted further along the path, toward the lane. The lane led past several cottages, including one belonging to Thomas Wren. He was a quiet man, known for his careful work repairing clocks and watches, and for his tendency to walk with his hands in his pockets, as though he were always thinking about something just beyond reach. Nora found him in his garden, adjusting a small wooden bench. "Good afternoon," she said. Thomas looked up. "Nora, you're not at the tea room?" "Briefly elsewhere," she replied. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you pass by the tea room yesterday afternoon?" Thomas nodded. I did. Around 4, perhaps. Did you notice anything unusual? He hesitated. Only that Mrs. Pembrey seemed distracted, he said. She was standing by the window, adjusting her shawl. Nora's thoughts sharpened slightly. Did she step outside? I believe so, just for a moment. Nora thanked him and continued down the lane. Eliza stepping outside, adjusting her shawl. The thread caught on the lavender. The locket could have slipped free then. But if it had fallen on the path, someone would have seen it. Unless... Her steps slowed. Across the lane stood a small wooden gate, slightly ajar. Beyond it, a narrow path led into the orchard. The orchard was not private exactly, but it was quiet, less traveled. Nora pushed the gate open. The orchard held that particular stillness of late afternoon, where light filtered through leaves in soft, shifting patterns, and the air seemed to carry its own hush. She walked slowly, her eyes scanning the ground. Grass, fallen leaves, the occasional apple not yet ripe, and then a glint. Faint, almost hidden. Nora knelt. There, nestled in the grass, near the base of an old apple tree, was the locket. She picked it up carefully. It was warm from the sun. The chain was intact, though slightly twisted. For a moment, Nora simply held it. The mystery, in its simplest form, was solved. The locket had slipped from Eliza's neck, fallen unnoticed, and rested here until found. And yet, Nora turned it over in her hand. There was something else, not about how it had been lost, but about why it mattered. She returned to Eliza's cottage as the light began to soften. Eliza opened the door, and for the first time since the previous day, her expression shifted fully into something unmistakable. Relief. Oh, she breathed, as Nora held out the locket. I found it in the orchard, Nora said. Eliza took it gently, her fingers lingering over its surface. I must have dropped it, she said. Yes. But Nora did not leave. Instead, she said, May I ask you something? Eliza looked up. Of course. What does it hold? Eliza hesitated. Then, slowly, she opened the locket. Inside was not a photograph, not exactly. It was a small folded piece of paper, worn at the edges, carefully kept. Eliza unfolded it. Nora did not lean closer, but she could see enough to recognize handwriting. Old, familiar. This was my husband's, Eliza said softly. He wrote it many years ago. Nora waited. It's not long, Eliza continued. Just a few lines. But I've carried it with me ever since. She paused. And yesterday, I was thinking about him. Eliza smoothed the small folded paper between her fingers. The creases softened by years of being opened and closed. "It isn't much," she said quietly, "but it's everything." She turned it slightly so Nora could see. The handwriting was steady and familiar, the kind that comes from writing slowly with care. It read, "If ever the days feel too hard, or the quiet feels too wide, remember this: I'm with you. Sit for a moment. Let the light reach you. I'm with you still, in every place you feel at peace." Eliza's fingers rested gently over the words. "He wrote it just before he passed," she said. "Not as a goodbye, just something he wanted me to have." Nora didn't speak. Some things weren't meant to be answered, only held. Nora felt something settle into place. Not a puzzle piece, but a feeling. "You stepped outside," she said gently. "Yes, I needed a moment." "And the locket slipped free." Eliza nodded. They stood in quiet understanding. The mystery, as it turned out, had not been complicated, but it had not been simple either, because what had been lost was not just the locket. It was a moment, a memory, something held close for a very long time. That evening, the tea room reopened. The villagers returned. The conversations resumed. The gentle rhythm of Briar Hollow continued. And when Mrs. Pembry entered, the locket resting once more at her throat, no one asked many questions, because in Briar Hollow, it was enough to know that something had been lost and found again. Later, as Nora closed the tea room for the night, she stood for a moment by the window. The same window, the same soft breeze. And she thought about how easily something small could slip away, and how quietly it could be returned. Not through urgency, not through force, but through attention and care, and the simple act of noticing. In Briar Hollow, nothing truly stayed lost, not for long. And certainly not when someone was willing to look, gently, until it found its way home.